Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. Today, the Senate's top Democrat and words from Washington. Marlene Lockard has the rundown.
Sam, today we're going to talk to Senate Minority Leader Dina Titus and learn why she wants to become Nevada's next governor. Also with us is Scott Bensing, Chief of Staff to Senator John Ensign, and we're going to talk to him about the omnibus budget bill.
And joining us on the Power Pundit panel today, John Seelmeyer and Martha Gould. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by Sunbelt Communication.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I live the Army values.
I will never
accept defeat.
I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough.
I am a professional.
I am a professional.
I am the guardian of freedom
And the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am the Army National Guard.
Defend freedom. In the Army National Guard, you can. Visit 1-800-GO-GUARD.com today.
For a hole in your roof or a whole new roof, Ken Dillon, owner of Van Dyne Roofing, can get it fixed with his eyes closed.
The Abowed family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
If you own a business and want to maximize your company's potential, join the Retail Association of Nevada. Our membership benefits include the Nevada Retail Network Self-Insured Group, providing workers' compensation coverage that can lower your rates. That savings can go directly to your bottom line. We are an effective pro-business organization that lobbies on behalf of our business members. The Retail Association of Nevada, protecting Nevada businesses for 35 years.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're joined by State Senator Dina Titus, who is the Senate Minority Leader. Welcome to the program, Dina.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Dina, already it seems like we just ended one election and they're already talking about 2006. You've indicated your desire to be a candidate for governor. What makes you think, as a liberal Democrat, that you would be able to win over conservative northern Nevada?
Well, first, I don't think necessarily in those terms of liberal and conservative. You know, after the last election, everybody said, oh, Nevada is a red state. Well, I don't believe that. I think Nevada is still full of very independent-minded voters. I think in the next election, we will have a lot of statewide races open, a lot of good candidates running, and people are going to go back to the notion of looking at politics in a personal way, looking at individuals and looking at issues that affect the state. I think those are not conservative versus liberal issues. Those are mostly quality of life issues, issues like growth that affect all of us, no matter what part of the state we're in, issues like stretching services, increased ethnic diversity, increased number of seniors. I think you talk about those kind of issues that people relate to, not talk about in terms of red or blue or liberal or conservative.
Okay, Richard Perkins is in the race. Jim Gibson is in the race. Perhaps Oscar Goodman is in the race. Jim Gibbons is in the race. The list seems to go on. There's only so much money. You said, oh, and Governor Hunt, Lieutenant Governor Hunt is also in the race. Will you have the financial backing that you need for this race?
I think I will, because I'm a viable candidate, and so I believe that I can raise money. I've done it in the past. I will have a bit of a war chest going in. Richard Perkins may have more because he's been Speaker and in the majority. The thing that tells me that's important about what you just said, all those different people who are running, is that it is an open race. I think you'll see more names before all of this is over. Open seat, open race, that old anointment process is over, and that's good for me and good for the state.
I was curious, Senator, why is it that you decided to sit on Senate Finance this year for the first time ever?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is I have served on judiciary since I was first elected, so a long time, so I know those issues pretty well. They used to focus mostly on gaming, and now they've gotten to be more kind of criminal statutes. I was looking for a change. I think finance is very important. This session especially, it's all about where the money goes. We raised taxes last time. Now let's be sure we use those tax dollars in good ways that bring real rewards. I think sitting on finance will allow me to be a part of that process. Also, I want to learn as much about this budget as I can before I decide to run for governor, so that it's not anything that I don't know. And third, I think that the Republican caucus that has been so controlled by Senator Washoe for so many years is more open. He and I worked very well together last session on the tax issue, and I look forward to working with them now on the other side of the money question.
Do you think the banks are going to get some relief tax-wise this session?
Well, they certainly are coming back. Once you open up that whole tax package, though, you have to be careful where it goes. My main concern about the bank tax are rural banks. You want to be sure you don't put little banks out of business. We need as much economic development as possible out there in the rurals. So if there's some way we can give them some relief without unraveling the whole package, I think that's a good idea.
Well, now, when you say rural banks, you're talking about branches of major banks that are in the rural areas?
There may be some of those, but there are also some little independent banks scattered around the state. We have a number of those in Nevada.
Okay, let's talk about the Democratic Party in the state of Nevada after this election. For a time there, it looked like John Kerry had a chance in the Silver State. Obviously, he ended up not winning. What are you doing to get all the Democrats together and moving in the right direction here?
Well, I have never seen the kind of momentum that we had going in this last election. There were people in northern Nevada, southern Nevada, in the rural, so much turnout, so much enthusiasm. It'll be a real challenge to keep that momentum going to the next election. But you've got to remember, now we have Harry Reid, who is in the #1 position in Washington, who will be keeping the party energized. You will have all those open seats in 2 years, and people, as you say, are already talking about running for them. So that's going to keep people motivated. We took seats in the legislature, so there's some victory there. You will have the interim local elections, too, that will keep people kind of part of the process. So it will be a task, I admit that, but I don't think it's one that we can't rise to.
Dina, just to switch topics quickly here, is your renewable energy bill that you've got pending in the legislature going to be one of your top priorities this session?
Well, I've long worked on renewable energy. I think that's very important. You know, Nevada is the sunniest state in the country. We should be at the cutting edge when it comes to developing and using renewable energy. I worked on the portfolio standard so that we get part of our energy from renewable sources. Net metering is another one. I think we should keep that always at the top of the agenda. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm going to be working on water. I think the state needs a water planner. That's going to be a huge issue in this session.
Are you comfortable with the bill that's gone through that's going to bring all that water from Lincoln County into Clark County?
I think that when it comes to water, this is now a state issue, not a local issue, because it is crossing those county lines. There's a lot of water in rural Nevada, but we don't know how much. We need to do an inventory of water. How much is there? Where is it? Southern Nevada needs some of that. They need to find a way to get some water, maybe not as much as some people would like, but you need to compensate adequately rural Nevada if you go up there looking for water, and also you have to worry about the environment. So all those folks need to come to the table. It's got to be something that we work together on as opposed to something where we're adversarial.
Senator Titus, always a pleasure to have you here on the program. We appreciate you being here. And we'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
If you think Wells Fargo is only checking accounts, you're not seeing the whole picture. Online brokerage, mutual funds, mortgages, and home equity accounts. So get more than free checking and start reaching your goals today. Now you get the picture. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
When you need a new employee, how can you be sure who you're really hiring? A background investigation by Employer Links will uncover criminal records, verify the applicant's education, check their credit history and Social Security verification. An investigation will research professional licenses and driver's licenses and let you know why they're unemployed. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
So, who do you use for workers' comp?
Pro Group Management.
Ah, I've heard some good things about them.
You bet. Employee background checks, safety training, claim seminars. Oh, and here's the great part. If you have an issue, they work for you, not against you.
Sounds perfect. And expensive.
Well, that's the best part. They saved me 30%. I've heard they've saved others 50%.
Works for me. Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
It's the next best thing to having your own wine cellar. Come to the Bonanza Casino for a first and fine dining, reasonably priced wines. When you dine at Cactus Creek Southwestern Steakhouse, you can also enjoy a fine bottle of wine at just about the same price you'd pay at the Vineyard, Silver Oak, Robert Mondavi, Rombauer, Cakebread, Jordan, and Duckhorn, just to name a few. And at the lowest prices of any restaurant or casino in Northern Nevada. And remember, all fine wines are not in wine cellars. They're in the Cactus Creek at the Bonanza Casino where locals come to play.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we welcome to the program Chief of Staff to John Ensign, Scott Bensing. Welcome to the program, Scott.
Thanks, Sam.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess the big news is the failure of the intelligence bill to pass muster in the waning days of this Congress. And I know there's talk that they're going to bring it back up next week when they go back. But I was curious about how Senator Ensign felt about some of the provisions that the House was trying to insert. Sensenbrenner mentioned that he was one of the ones blocking it because he wanted the provision for illegal aliens who now can access driver's license for a prohibition to be put in place. And do you support that measure of Sensenbrenner's?
There were a number of, yes, it is a big issue. The intelligence bill was something the president very much wanted to get done prior to the election because there was a sense of urgency about it, a political sense of urgency. I think there were, and still are, a large number of congressmen and senators who think it is much more important, even at first blush, to get this done correctly than it is to rush for political expediency to show you accomplished something. There's a number of provisions that the House bill had on immigration that Senator Ensign specifically is supportive of, but we still have a wide disparity. Those who are opposed are very much opposed, and to try to pick and choose for the sake of compromising just to get a bill right now, I think we may look back months, if we are able to get it done, look back early next year and see that we made a lot of mistakes. It's a huge overhaul, and if you look at the history of how long it takes Congress to get things done, a lot of times that's prolonged, and 6-8 years for a telecom rewrite or something that big. There's a reason for that. I mean, the Senate is slow and pathetically so for a reason to make sure we get a good.
Would the senators support the driver's license prohibition for illegal aliens?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar enough with that specific provision to.
Let me ask you another question then concerning immigration. The President has made it very plain that he wants to see a form of immigration reform to allow guest workers to come into the country with the potential down the road that they could become citizens. They're not calling it an amnesty, but plainly it could become an amnesty. How does Senator Ensign feel about that?
He feels amnesty is not something Senator Ensign supports. However, the proposal by the President allows us to take a number of a number of workers who are here paying taxes. They're in our system to try to bring them into the system officially. And he believes it's important to, we can't just ignore the millions who are here. We've got to, especially those who are here, who are paying taxes, who are raising their families, and playing by the rules. There ought to be a way to get them into the system so their work is recognized.
So some form of amnesty.
Well, it wouldn't be a form of amnesty as much as would be a way to get them into the system.
Okay, I think you're having it both ways there, but I understand what you're saying, and I would support that.
Well, what you say with an amnesty is across the board, everybody who's here is deemed legally here, and that's not something we support.
There was, when they did it in '86, there was a cutoff date beyond which people who had arrived after that, because that was in process, as you say, over many years. It started in 1977, wasn't passed till '86, and so there was a considerable period of time where it was being discussed before the bill was actually passed. And so they made a cutoff so that people could not flood the country and hope to gain legality.
Right. I think the big difference here is we want to focus on people who are here working, not just any kind of blanket policy.
You know, we talked about the omnibus spending bill, and historically that has just been, you know, this year it's 14 pounds. They don't measure it by pages anymore. They measure it by pounds. But it's very alarming because not only are there provisions, abortion language got inserted into the bill, mariachi band for Clark County, Nevada got funded, some little...
it was a desperate need.
A desperate need. But when we look and see now the provision that someone slipped in, and of course you can never find the ghost who puts those one-liners in the bill, but to allow staff and the Appropriations Committee chairman the ability to look at individual taxpayers' returns is very alarming.
Yeah, it is indeed. And let me say up front, it is a horrible way to govern. Having said that, we've been doing it that way for a while because we can't come to agreement individually on the 13 appropriations bills. We find ourselves more often than not in an election year coming back to try to clean up. We passed Department of Defense and one or two others. The rest were all lumped together. Yeah. And anytime you wait till the end of the year, have a 5,000-page bill that is essentially being negotiated up to midnight and then having a vote the next day, it becomes very difficult for congressmen and senators to know what's in it. Now, we have a hard and fast rule, and that's Senator doesn't vote on anything that we haven't read page by page, and we had a whole ledge staff go through it. I'd be surprised if most offices did that.
Well, don't you think the provisions to give incentives to nuclear waste development, nuclear power development and research is at odds with our position on Yucca Mountain here in Nevada?
No, I don't, because there are responsible ways to take care of nuclear waste. And really some developments.
For example, briefly.
On-site storage is the perfect example.
I like that.
And even it's been suggested that the Department of Energy could take liability and responsibility for the waste that's stored on site so that individual nuclear power plants would not have to do so. There's a number of technologies, none of which is in the production phase, that would allow us to actually, if you will, burn the really bad stuff, the stuff that's going to stick around for 300,000 years. If we can do that, then we've got low-level nuclear waste, and we have a lot of that already. That we can store. Building in a mountain or any place else a facility to store high-level nuclear waste for 250,000 years can't be done. Scientifically, we can't do that.
And I doubt that there's a Nevadan that would disagree with you. Well, maybe a couple. Thanks for being here, Scott. Always a pleasure. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
When you need a new employee, how can you be sure who you're really hiring? A background investigation by Employer Links will uncover criminal records, verify the applicant's education, check their credit history and Social Security verification. An investigation will research professional licenses and driver's licenses and let you know why they're unemployed. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
hole in your roof or a whole new roof, Ken Dillon, owner of Van Dyne Roofing, can get it fixed with his eyes closed.
Are you ready to experience Reno's ultimate lobster buffet? Then bring your appetite to the El Dorado, where we're serving a half-pound of slipper lobster tail for just $5 with the purchase of a dinner buffet. Catch it every night of the week. Are you in?
If you think Wells Fargo is only checking accounts, you're not seeing the whole picture. Online brokerage, mutual funds, mortgages, and home equity accounts. So get more than free checking and start reaching your goals today. Now you get the picture. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, Marlene and I are joined by John Seelmeyer, who is the editor of Northern Nevada Business Weekly, and Martha Gould, one of our Washoe County Democrats, used to run the library system here in Washoe County. Pleasure to have both of you here. You want to start off, Marlene?
You know, this morning in the paper, you may have noted that Pat Mulroy is opening a new Pat Mulroy, the executive director of the Southern Nevada Water District, is opening an office in Ely, Nevada. How do you all feel about that?
Does anyone here remember the rape of the Owens Valley?
I think we all do.
Okay. I really sort of have a problem. I know that Southern Nevada desperately needs water, but I really have a problem with the idea of taking water from other parts of Nevada who they also need the water and shipping it. There is going to be an economic benefit to some of the rural counties if they're going to build this aqueduct or this tunnel or whatever it is. But there has to be a better way of handling water issues and taking from Peter to pay Paul.
Well, but you're putting the water where the growth is. I mean, the same thing is going to happen in Reno. You're going to see water coming down from Honey Lake through Vidla water from Fish Springs Valley.
Oh yes, wasn't there a county commissioner with a shovel?
You know something? You're going to end up seeing that water coming here because the growth that's going on in both Clark County and Washoe County is going to result in us we need the water now.
Water flows in the direction of money.
That is correct, it does. But at the same time, what happens to the people that are losing access to their water? Well, just because there's growth here doesn't mean you dump on people there.
Have you heard of all the new industries that are moving to Lincoln County? Exactly. So, I mean, I think the point is that John's point is well made, that water flows to where the money is and where the business and needs are.
There are still people who live in Lincoln County.
Right, but they're not planning to drain every last drop. It's going to be some sustainable amount of water that will be going there. You heard Senator Titus earlier.
What is sustainable?
Well, you heard Senator Titus earlier on the program talking about the need to do a state water audit to figure out how much water we have and where. There is a lot of deep geologic water that was discovered during the MX process.
That's right.
That exists in the Stova State, and I'm frankly, to aid growth, I think that this should be used. Marlene, you got some thoughts on that?
Well, only if it's do the audit on the water first before you start talking about moving water from point A to point B.
The county's latest survey published this morning indicated that, as usual, growth and water was the #1 issue. But what fell off the chart was economic development, economic diversification. Does that surprise you, John?
It surprises me a little bit, but I think it's more a reflection that we've had some tremendously good economic times here. Jobs are not something that residents are worried about at a time when unemployment rate is about 2.8%. On the other hand, I think it's really worthwhile. Economic development needs to be on the priority list for us because rather than quality of economic development, I think, or quantity, we need to be talking about quality now. You hear the economic development specialists statewide now talking much more about making sure that the jobs that come here are above the statewide average so we can continue to pull that number up. And it becomes all the more important when we've got housing prices. such as they are. And I simply don't know how a family, even if both spouses are working at $8 or $9 an hour, I don't know. They certainly can't afford to buy, but I don't know how they can afford to rent in some of these markets.
Well, at a 2% unemployment rate in Washoe County, do we even have the workers for new businesses?
And that's a big thing, because you write constantly about the new businesses that are coming to the area, and in the business park there are properties that are going to come in requiring 500 to 1,000 workers, and that's got to be a big concern for businesses.
Absolutely. There are a couple of things that are happening. One is that a 2.8 unemployment rate counts only people who are looking for work, and if the rate gets low enough and if there's some pressure to get wages up, people who didn't want to work for whatever reason decide to get into the labor market.
Or it doesn't address the people who have fallen off the radar because they are no longer getting unemployment.
But what kind of percentage would that actually be if you were to count that? I mean, it's got to be infinitesimally small at this point in northern Nevada. I mean, I personally could get 100 jobs, within an hour on the telephone today without even thinking about it. If you want to work, it's there.
The other thing, too, I think people perhaps don't really make a connection between economic development and quality of life issues, because there is a symbiotic relationship there. And I'm not sure when people talk about growth and water and air quality and traffic, they don't connect that to the impact of economic development. They see what immediately impacts them. How can they get from their home to their work without sitting in traffic for an hour? Because there's a problem with construction.
Well, personally, I'm excited about the growth because I think it's terrific for the Silver State. We're seeing growth in areas that we never imagined we'd see it, and it's up to us to figure out how to maintain that quality of life. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
The Aboud family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
For a hole in your roof or a whole new roof, Ken Dillon, owner of Van Dyne Roofing, can get it fixed with his eyes closed.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we love to get your emails at newsmakers@krnv.com and newsmakers@kbbc.com. We'd love to hear from you. Coming up on the next show, John Lilly, president of the University of Nevada. We'll see you then.